Welcome back to Fox Eyes on the Hill Live this Sunday morning. You know, President-elect Donald Trump's administration is now taking shape. It will be up to the U.S. Senate, though, to confirm his picks for the top cabinet positions. Siobhan Hughes is with the Wall Street Journal. She's been covering Congress for more than 20 years. You've got a keen understanding on how the Senate works. I just want to, before we talk about players and who he picked and who he had to pick again, what's your sense of what's going on the Hill with these Republicans as they're watching these picks come in? I was up there Wednesday. I privately heard from a lot of people a lot of eye rolling.
You could also see the public eye rolling, which of course is not quotable in print, but there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of, gasping. Even though there's not overt criticism of President Trump, you definitely hear some of the skepticism when you ask about these nominees.
Some of them had said that they felt that they were being put in a position that they didn't deserve when they had given the president-elect a lot of support through the campaign. Is there a feeling on Senate Republicans' part that they're being backed into a corner here right now after they were loyal throughout the campaign?
They do feel a little bit like they're being backed into a corner, absolutely. But at the same time, President-elect Trump got a lot of those guys across the finish line, and so they also owe him to a degree, and it's a complicated dynamic.
Yeah, it is an interesting relationship. Let's start with some of these picks. The Secretary of the Treasury, one of the most important jobs in any cabinet, is going to be Scott Bessent. Early on, the reception seems to be positive, but we're only in, really the first 48 hours of this news coming down.
Yeah, this is one of those nominations where you can almost feel the sigh of relief. He's somebody who Republicans view as a bit of a moderating influence, maybe a throwback to that very first Trump term when people felt that those around Trump could kind of rein in some of his impulses.
And, over at State, you tend to kind of look at the Treasury Secretary and the Secretary of State as two of the most paired positions in the cabinet. But then you also have, if you triangulate this, the Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth has been accused of a sexual assault right now. He denies it. However, that nomination coming after Matt Gaetz having to withdraw appears to maybe not be in trouble right now, but has hit rough water.
It's not in trouble the way the Matt Gaetz nomination was in trouble, but you're right. The sexual assault issues are going to have to come up. There's a lot of discomfort, particularly among some of the Republican Senate women I've spoken to. But, at the same time, Republicans can't go too far in how much they challenge Trump's nominees, because then, they risk stirring up the Trump base against them.
And part of the problem with that, too, is that we're in a period of time right now where Republicans are about to take over the U.S. Senate. They probably don't want to be in a situation where they're at odds with this White House, which does tend to have a long memory about people he sees who has wronged him.
Yeah, and on top of that, Republicans have their own agenda. What they want to do is get the tax bill passed, the expiring 2017 tax cuts.
One of the things we know, though, is that there is a clock and a calendar underway right now. This current Congress has 3 weeks left. There's still things to do. Can they get any of it done before 3 weeks from now?
So they can. Is it going to be pretty? Probably not. Chief among them is keeping the government funded beyond, the middle of this year. And that's where a lot of the focus is going to be when we all return after Thanksgiving.
We had a conversation at the beginning of this program with Robert McCartney, formerly of the Washington Post, about the bill that will turn the RFK campus over to the District of Columbia. That was a bit of a surprise in that committee because Senator Steve Daines had opposed the legislation. He's ended that opposition now, and the bill did get out of committee. How's it looking when it goes to the floor of the Senate?
Well, this is where some of these issues sag. Maybe the spending bill is what becomes a vehicle for that particular issue, and you've got to imagine somebody's working behind the scenes to do just that.
One of the things that we do know from this incoming administration is that they are creating something called the Department of Government Efficiency, which promises, through the words of Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, to radically change the way government operates and move or downgrade large scales of the federal workforce. How's that being received?
So a lot of Republicans like the idea of a smaller government. For them, in their best case scenario, people just resign, and that's how you whittle down the federal workforce. But, you know, it is still going to run into problems because the appropriators sit underneath that big white dome, and at some point, you've got to imagine their agenda will collide with the Trump agenda.
One of the most fascinating transitions that we're seeing in Washington right now has nothing to do with the White House, and I'm talking about John Thune taking over as the Republican leader in the U.S. Senate, getting the reins from Mitch McConnell, who famously did not always see eye to eye with Donald Trump, and that's being kind. John Thune is very supportive of the president, but they do not seem wired the same way all the time. What's that relationship looking like?
That's going to be another one of these complicated relationships. Don't forget that Donald Trump had tried to primary John Thune, and John Thune has worked to repair the relationship. But, you know, one of the problems he's going to have is not only is he not always going to see eye to eye with President Trump, but many of his Republican colleagues can pick up the phone in the middle of a meeting with John Thune and get Trump on that line. And so he's going to face some power challenges.
Well, John Thune worked very hard to become the majority leader of the U.S. Senate with the Republicans. It might be a case of be careful what you ask for as this relationship rolls out. Siobhan Hughes, thank you so much. Correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Good to see you as well.
You too.
All right, happy Thanksgiving. Want to remind you, coming up here at 9 a.m., it is Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream. Their conversation is going to look at all of these comings and goings coming up at the 9 o'clock hour. I want to remind you, we're going to continue our conversation here over on Fox Local. Join us for the after show as well. We will see you here next week, and we all hope you have a blessed and happy Thanksgiving. Take care.